Do you know agentic commerce? This is something that we are talking more and more. Main question is it real? Is it concrete or not yet? Just a perspective or a wish? And what merchant has to do with that? How to manage it? How to manage the risk and the opportunities? Well, it's a big question. We will discuss all this topic with Adam Davis from Forter. Hello everyone, and welcome for this new episode of Voices of Payments. Today we will have a very interesting discussion about agentic AI. To raise that subject, I'm pleased to be with Adam from Forter that will present and will discuss about agentic AI, machine learning, and merchants, how the merchant can take that subject. So welcome, Adam. Thank you to be with us today.
Thank you, Arno. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you first introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Adam Davis. I'm the Payment Partnerships Lead at Forter, which means I'm responsible for driving our strategy on payment optimization, so how we help our merchant customers and partners maximize the performance of their payment stack whilst eliminating any potential risk of fraud and abuse. And I'm also leading our go-to-market strategy for agentic commerce. So really understanding what are the opportunities and the risks posed to merchants specifically by agents that can now autonomously shop on behalf of consumers, what's needed from an infrastructure perspective to capitalize on that opportunity, and what's needed from a risk management perspective to keep those malicious bots at bay.
Well, first, how do you work with merchants? What do you provide in terms of services to merchants?
So Forter works with merchants in a number of different ways. Primarily, we are an identity intelligence platform, and we sit across the full value lifecycle. So from the point of sign up or login, we can provide account protection services through to checkout. And as the customer browses a merchant's website, we're able to identify whether that's a genuine and legitimate customer or whether it's a malicious or potentially a fraudster shopping on the site attempting to initiate transactions. When we get to checkout, we can then ensure that any malicious transactions are blocked prior to authorization and that any legitimate transactions are managed in a optimized way to maximize performance, whether that's in a regulatory context, such as PSD2 here in Europe, ensuring that we're maximizing the utilization of exemptions where possible. After purchase, we then work with merchants to support with dispute management, maximizing win rates where chargebacks have been falsely filed, either in an event where it's a first-party fraud use case, or for cases where perhaps it's a chargeback that's being misrepresented for any reason by a customer. And really looking across that entire life cycle as to how we maximize the value to the merchant in terms of reducing fraud costs, maximizing revenue, and improving the user experience.
So ready to manage a customer from the checking up to the checkout, the deliveries, and also the chargeback in that case.
Exactly, right the way from the very start of that merchant's relationship with a customer when they first create an account or first land on the website, right the way through to those post-purchase flows, such as the chargeback processes.
Very important for the merchants in that case to rely on someone to improve the conversion rate and the customer experience in that case.
Absolutely. If you think about, from a payments perspective, especially how to maximize performance and minimize costs, trust sits at the center of those decisions. If I can trust the customer that I'm interacting with, then I can give them a really positive experience. I can remove as much friction as possible from that purchase journey, for example. And if it's a customer that perhaps represents a higher risk, then I can start to selectively increase friction throughout that journey and manage the decisions that I, as a merchant, am making about how I interact with that potential customer in a much more informed way on the basis of I know who the customer identity is and I know the risk that they may represent or the opportunity that they may represent to me as a merchant and my business.
But if I understand well, you manage the risk on behalf of the merchant, the risk with the transactions that are processing. Usually, to manage a risk, we say, or often some say that it's better to do it by rule-based. But you are not working with rule-based, if I'm correct.
That's right. So Forter was founded around 12 years ago now, on the basis that, or the hypothesis that this rules-based approach that was so common at that point in time in the market was not sufficient. Right? When you think about an e-commerce transaction, by contrast to a transaction happening in store, there is a huge amount of data available in terms of how the customer is browsing the website, the cyber intelligence signals such as the device that they're using or the network that they're connecting from. As well as some of the hard data attributes that we capture through the checkout journey, such as the shipping address, the billing address. So looking at the full picture of all of that data that's available, which could be more than 6,000 data points for each transaction, to take an approach that's based on rules that is highly accurate would require hundreds, potentially thousands of rules that take into account all of those data points. And even then, there's a maintenance burden that comes with actually ensuring that those rules remain valid over time. They don't adapt automatically to changing fraudster behavior. They don't adapt automatically to changing legitimate customer behavior. So there's a very good chance that with a purely rules-based approach to risk management, you over-decline or insert too much friction for good customers. Or on the other end of the spectrum, you under-decline or you make the journey too seamless for malicious customers, right? Potential fraudsters. And so Forter has taken an approach from day one of being ML driven, so machine learning based. And this allows us to not only seamlessly take into account all of those thousands of data points to make a very precise decision at the point of transaction, but it also enables us to adapt in real time to those changing behaviors. The system is constantly fine-tuning itself.
So when we talk about machine learning, we are close to AI in that case. And with AI, now there is a new trend, it's agentic commerce. How do you manage, or how do you see that evolution of agentic commerce on one side, but then also how to manage it on a merchant point of view?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating development in the last few years. We've seen, AI in the more traditional definition, which is kind of these ML models and ML-based approach, to actually something that's more LLM and generative AI based. This has been a huge evolution for kind of the industry definition of what does it mean to be artificially intelligent. And with that comes a lot of new risks and a lot of new opportunities. And when I think about what does it mean to have an agent make a purchase, this is a fully autonomous transaction now, right? When we think about AI in the traditional sense, AI is a guide. It's supporting with decisions. It's helping us to take in vast amount of data and make good quality assessments on the basis of that data. When we move to agentic AI or agents in general, it's actually the AI is taking actions on your behalf. We're moving from something that's kind of guidance-based to something that actually autonomously acts. And I guess a good analogy there is having a sat-nav in your car, GPS to help you drive the right route, versus having a self-driving car. The car actually takes control and autonomously gets you to your destination. It's a big shift for what it means to have AI in the marketplace.
But in that case, how merchants can manage this type of evolution? Because right now they have websites, they have a basket, they have a lot of things in their website up to the checkout, but it's done by someone. if it's done by an agent, how to manage it, how to manage a risk, how to trust that that agent is the right one. I don't know which one, by the way, but it's the right one. How to manage a risk in that case?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think simultaneously, agentic AI represents both a massive opportunity and a massive risk to be managed, and that's how we think about it with the merchants and partners that we work with. On the risk side, if you think about it, the customer journey is no longer starting within the merchant's domain. Right? Today, when I want to shop with a merchant, I'll go to their websites or to their mobile app or to their social channels or even in store, and I'm starting my customer journey with the merchant. The merchant has full visibility of me as a customer, my identity, my device, my all of those data points that we talked about earlier. When we think about autonomous agentic AI or agentic commerce, the customer journey is starting on an AI platform, right? The top of the funnel has moved even higher. And as a merchant, by the time an agent arrives on my website to say, hey, I'm making a purchase on behalf of Adam or Arno, the merchant is seeing a lot less data about the underlying customer than they were before. The agent kind of works as a bit of a smokescreen, and that creates some degree of risk, right? Previously, a fraudster, if they wanted to look legitimate, might use a device emulator to, mask the device that they're using and maybe pretend to be an Android user or an iPhone user or whatever device they want to emulate. They may also use a VPN to try and hide their location and mask some of that information. And obviously, we have at Forta sophisticated tools that allow us to manage risk even when those capabilities are being used. But when you think about an agent, a fraudster is now able to instruct an agent, and that agent is already masking all of their information, right? When I, as a merchant, look at an agent, what I'm seeing is an IP address that maybe comes from a data center in San Francisco. I'm seeing a device that is a Windows or Microsoft virtual machine that's been spun up for use exclusively by that agent. So there's kind of built-in untraceability when you're an agent, and that makes it very difficult for merchants to manage the risk. It's also very scalable. If I'm a fraudster, I could have 10, 20, even 100 different agents going out and attacking and testing different merchants to try and complete fraudulent purchases. And those agents could be operating autonomously even when I'm asleep. It's inherently 24/7. So the risk of agentic AI is quite substantial because it's a fantastic tool that supercharges the capabilities of fraudsters. But on the other hand, as a merchant, I don't want to block all of those transactions completely, because there's also going to be a lot of legitimate customers that want to use these agents because it represents a lot of convenience to them, and agents can be very valuable for the customer experience. So as a merchant, the big challenge is, how do I tell the difference between a legitimate agent acting on behalf of a good customer that I want to do business with, and a malicious agent that might be doing the bidding of a fraudster behind the scenes?
It looks to be very difficult, in fact, to identify an agent, and if it is a trusted agent or not, based on what you say. Maybe some opportunities, but how do you help merchants to identify if it is a normal agent or a fraudulent agent? What you do to help the merchant in that case?
Yeah, so there are a number of emerging standards in the industry for how agents can add themselves to a registry, insert certificates that validate things like the purchase intent. And these all serve as signals to a merchant that the agent can be more trustworthy. But the challenge that we see with the various protocols for agentic commerce that have been announced this year is that there's still a lot of data leakage. It doesn't fill in the gaps when an agent arrives on the merchant's website to say, this is Adam's device is the normal device that you recognize, his IP address is the normal IP address that you recognize. That problem still exists. What these protocols are trying to do is create an assertion framework or an attestation framework where there's a certificate in the request header when an agent arrives on the merchant's website that can be validated, that says this agent has registered into Visa's registry or OpenAI's registry, or perhaps with Cloudflare's WebBot authentication framework. And the merchant's able to validate those protocols. Now, we see that as still something that has the opportunity to be improved. And what we at Forter launched earlier this year, in April, we launched V1 of our product to actually differentiate trusted bots from malicious agents, or trusted agents and malicious agents. Really, what we're building is we have an identity network of 2 billion consumer identities today. We're starting to build out the mappings between each of those consumer identities and any agents that might be representing each of those consumers. And then as we've progressed through the year, various different protocols and capabilities have been announced, and we've launched a V2 of that solution in August, which actually enables, it essentially enhances what we launched in April to really help merchants understand, can I trust this agent that's shopping on my website based on who is the underlying customer, which protocols are they using, what's the source of the agent to my website, which platform has it actually come from, and is that a trusted platform? But there's still more to be done. And so we actually announced a proposed protocol for agentic commerce in August as well, the Trusted Agentic Commerce Protocol. And this is really our signal to the industry that we see opportunity to refine the protocols that already exist and try and shift from this assertion model where the agent simply says, you can trust me, here's a certificate that says so, to something that actually is more of a data persistence model. So actually the data that's available at the interaction between the customer and the agent at the top of the funnel, that data can be captured and then submitted through the value chain to the merchant and any merchant vendors that might be involved in assessing that transaction, to ensure that the merchant actually doesn't lose visibility of a lot of the data that they have today. So they're able to make their own determination of the risk that agent might pose to their website.
Is it really an opportunity for merchants? Because we talk about the risk, but is it a real opportunity, or is it better for merchants to say that, no, I don't want agents, so I will block everything coming from agent to not take any risk? Or is there a real opportunity for merchants to accept agents on one side, and at the same time, does that mean that they need to evolve their e-commerce website to take into account agents? Because right now it's not prepared for agent.
Absolutely. So yes, it definitely represents an opportunity to merchants. There will be net new revenue for merchants that comes from agent initiated transactions going forward. And that's really a reflection of changing customer behavior. Customers see value in using AI to help research their purchases, to help simplify those purchase flows in some cases. It might be the case that you're planning a trip and you want AI to help you research, an itinerary for the trip, make recommendations on where to stay. And then it's very logical that the customer could say to the AI, great, could you go and reserve all of those activities and hotels and flights that you've just helped me research? On the other end of the spectrum, there's more boring purchases, perhaps like insurance policies. Perhaps I can use an AI agent to help research which policy best suits my need, comparing several different providers, reading through all of the detailed documentation, and then coming back to me as the customer with a detailed recommendation. So there's very clear use cases for how an agent can add value to the shopping journey for a customer. And that's going to lead to not just net new revenue, but also cannibalization of existing e-commerce volume. And what we see is that estimates from a couple of different studies in the industry are suggesting that about 25% of total e-commerce volume by 2030 could be agent initiated.
Oh,
And merchants that aren't able to support agentic transactions will be closing themselves off to that segment of the digital commerce market.
oh,
And
okay.
that
So
brings us,
there is no
go ahead.
choice. I would say, based on what you just say, there is no choice for merchant to take into account the fact that agentic commerce will arrive in any case.
Exactly. And that brings us nicely into the, as a merchant, what do I need to do to actually capitalize on this opportunity? You said it, Arno, a little earlier, like e-commerce websites for merchants today aren't really set up to support merchants, to support agents. And what we're seeing right now is there's a lot of complexity for how this will be enabled. So first of all, there are a large number of different AI platforms, right? From OpenAI's ChatGPT to Anthropic's Claude to Google's Gemini to Perplexity and various other examples. We haven't even talked about Microsoft Copilot or or various other solutions there. And each of those AI platforms, in many cases, has designed their own protocol for how agents will interact with a merchant. So you can think of that as the language that the agent speaks. So as a merchant, I need to be able to speak 5 or 6 or 7 different languages to speak to each of the different agents from each of these different platforms. And then within each of those protocols, within each of these agentic languages, there are variations in the amount of data that I might receive about that transaction, in the type of payment credential that I receive. If we look at OpenAI's ACP framework, the credential I receive as a merchant is a shared payment token from Stripe. If we look at the proposals from Visa and MasterCard, the credential is an agentic network token. If we look at Perplexity, the credential is a one-time use virtual prepaid card in many cases. So not only as a merchant do I have to speak all of these languages, right, understand these protocols, I need to be able to work with varying levels of data, but in almost all cases, less data than I would get in other channels. And I need to be able to authorize a payment with all sorts of different payment credentials that might be used through those protocols. So we see a significant opportunity for a new kind of solution, which is almost an agentic orchestration platform, right? So a merchant can integrate to a single platform, and then through that platform, the platform itself acts as a gateway and a universal translation layer for all of these different protocols, all these different agentic languages, and providing a layer of standardization for the data, both in terms of trying to mitigate the leakage for those transactions where I see less about the underlying customer and I only see the data about the agent, to ensure that merchants can actually trust these transactions and make good decisions. And that's really what it's all about, is capitalizing on the opportunity in a way where risk is still inherently very, very managed. And so we see this as at its core, a trust problem. Agentic needs end-to-end trust to work. And that is the role of Forter. We are a global identity intelligence and trust platform, and we are building solutions for merchants that abstract away that complexity from agentic commerce to allow those merchants to rise up and capitalize on that opportunity in a way where risk is managed end to end.
Do you already see some agentic commerce already arriving or testing maybe?
Absolutely. So I think I would categorize it into two segments. One is what we call the AI referral flow. So I might do my research through the LLM platform, right? I might log into ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm buying a new monitor to use with work, let's say. And I want to find the best specification. Here are my requirements. Help me find the best monitor that meets this specification within my budget. But then it's a referral flow because the LLM will come back and say, I think I found a product that meets your needs. Here's the link. and I click the link, and then the rest of that customer journey feels like a traditional e-commerce flow. Right, I as the customer interacting with the websites, I'm browsing. Right, my browsing behavior looks like my normal behavior. It doesn't look like an autonomous bot. The merchant can see my device. They can see the network that I'm connecting from, and so they're able to manage the risk in that flow just as they do today. And when I get to checkout, it's me completing checkout on the merchant's website. So they manage checkout as they do today. And then there's the fully autonomous agentic commerce flow, which is where a lot of this opportunity and a lot of this challenge comes from. But to bring it back to your question, what are we seeing today? How much of this is real? Well, one of our partners, Salesforce, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday week, said that 17% of total transactions were AI referrals, or AI overall, but mostly AI referrals
Just
today.
say it again. How much?
17%. So
17.
almost 20% of their traffic, almost 1/5. One in every 5 transactions that Salesforce saw through their Commerce Cloud platform, which supports thousands of merchants globally with e-commerce flows. 1 in 5 of those transactions almost was agent facilitated in some way, either as a referral flow or as a fully autonomous checkout flow.
But also with a checkout flow. Not is it already with a checkout itself?
So the checkout flow is a very, very small percentage of that total.
But it's already there.
But it's already there. We see this. Perplexity was the first, right? Perplexity's platform delivered end-to-end autonomous checkout flows over the summer, and we've seen those through our network continuing since the summer. Still a very small percentage of total traffic, but very real. And then OpenAI launched its ACP powered instant checkout solution a couple of months ago. Etsy was one of the launch partners there. And so there are real transactions, real autonomous checkout transactions happening. And then more recently, Google announced its Buy For Me capability, which is kind of the Gemini solution for fully autonomous checkout. So this is becoming real very quickly. It's already real for the AI referral flow. It's already a significant portion of total transactions. But what's growing very quickly and what is technically already possible today is the fully autonomous checkout flow as well. So as we look to 2026, we see this as an accelerating trend, wow. And we think it's going to be a very big focus for merchants next year.
Good. So it's very, very interesting because on one side we see that there is no choice for merchants to take into account agentic commerce. As you say, it's already there. So we may anticipate maybe this type of adoption or the quick evolution of the agentic commerce. You already see it directly, and you already have the capability to help a merchant on the risk management for AI, if I'm correct.
Absolutely, yes. And that capability is only going to grow stronger over time as the industry continues to mature in terms of the underlying infrastructure that's enabling these transactions. And that's what we're seeing from the industry at the moment. The last 3 months have been a blur with different announcements from vendors within payments in terms of the new token technology that's available, the new protocols and languages that are available, the way that these agents actually interact with merchants. We're seeing a huge amount of infrastructure being built and a lot of solutions that then enable this end-to-end compatibility through that infrastructure. And our focus at Forter is to ensure that we not only enable our merchants to ride this wave and capitalize on this opportunity, but to do so in a way that doesn't introduce excessive risk to their ecosystem and that actually represents only the upside from agentic commerce whilst blocking any potential negative downside.
Excellent. It's amazing, and very interesting. I'm sure, Adam, we will have to do another update together. I would be very, very happy to see your point of view and how everything is evolving, how you see this type of evolution of agentic commerce. You mentioned 17% for in total, not just payment, but in total. I would love to see if it has grown a lot or not, if it's fine for you.
Absolutely, yes. And something to note for the listeners today, we are actually hosting a lot of this data available on our public site, so ai.forter.com. You can see Forter's perspective on agentic commerce through our global network. And that's available for free. You don't need to sign up or sign in. It's simply us sharing our visibility because we think it's so critical for the industry to come together in terms of understanding what is the trend, what is the rate of adoption, what are the challenges, the pain points, the opportunities. We see an important role for Forter in not only sharing our perspective, but also actually giving a little peek at the data that's coming through our network as well. So ai.forter.com is a good place to keep track of the growth of agentic commerce. And I would love to come back and talk to you in Q1 as well, Arno.
Good. Thank you so much, Adam. It's amazing, very interesting. And we see that payment sector by default is moving a lot. Everything is changing somehow. So the way to interact with merchants, the way to do business, to make a purchase, it's changing. So 2026 could be a new game changer for commerce in that case and for merchants.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most exciting times for the payments industry, perhaps since the introduction of the internet and e-commerce purchases, right? It's a massive shift in how customers are choosing to pay, how merchants need to interface with those customers, and the tools that are required to enable it. So we're in for an exciting year in 2026.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Arno. A pleasure as well.
That discussion with Adam was very interesting. We can see that agentic commerce is already there, and 2026 may be a game changer for e-commerce. Let's see. So, thank you very much to all of you for following us. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. See you next time for the next episode of Voices of Payment. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.